Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we're doing breaches of the week. And as always, I'd like to start by thanking the following people that sent me a lot of these breaches. It always helps me out, and that would be Barrett Peterson, Jay Dance, Chris Fallon, and Su Zhu Hao. Thank you very much, all of you, and I will give you a shout out on my nationally syndicated radio show in a couple of days here. Moving on, let's talk about our first data breach, which is cannabis delivery company Unrivaled Brands, aka Silver Streak. Now, they reported a data breach stemming from a misconfigured web application that caused the personal information of people to be accessible on their website. Now, according to Silver Streak, the breach resulted in the names, dates, birth, addresses, driver's license numbers, and email addresses of those individuals that were compromised. On June 17th, they filed basically an official notice breach. So if you use Silver Streak or Unrivaled Brands for all your cannabis delivery needs, you better check in. You might have been hit. Moving on. Let's talk about Fitzgibbon Hospital. They appear to have been the victim of a ransomware attack that was carried out by a previously unknown group of cyber criminals that go by the name Daxon Team. Now, Fitzgibbon Hospital has not yet confirmed the attack. Daxon Team, though, took credit for it, sharing a link to basically a dark website basically containing all of the stolen information that apparently is coming from Fitzgibbon Hospital. And based on reviews, it appears that some of this compromised data is patients' names, dates of birth, medical record numbers, patient account numbers, social security numbers, medical and treatment information, and more. So if you're a patient at Fitzgibbon Hospital, heads up. Moving on. To give you a quick update on the MCG medical supply chain data breach. MCG is basically one of those things in the healthcare supply chain that is essentially offering services to various entities. In this past week, Phelps County Regional Medical Center had to declare a data breach because they used MCG. 12,602 patients were affected. Supply chain breaches are never fun. Moving on. I want to give you a quick update on Uber's horrific 2016 data breach. If you recall, tens of millions of Uber users got their credit card information and personal information stolen, and then Uber tried to cover it up. Well, basically the lawsuits continue, and here's what's going on recently. A U.S. judge on June 28th threw out an attempt to dismiss wire fraud charges against a former Uber employee that was accused of trying to cover up basically this entire thing. Now, former Uber security chief Joseph Sullivan is set to face criminal charges after U.S. District Attorney Judge William Orrick rejected his claim that prosecutors did not, quote-unquote, adequately allege that the goal of the claimed misrepresentation of the security breach was to get Uber's drivers to stay with the platform and continue paying fees. Basically, they didn't want to declare because they didn't want to lose customers. Well, they lost one when that came to light. I have never used Uber since. Now, in December of last year, a federal grand jury handed down a superseding indictment adding wire fraud to the list of charges pending against Mr. Sullivan for his role in that basically cover-up in 2016, or I should say alleged cover-up in 2016, breach at Uber. The incident led to, as I mentioned, 57 million user and driver records and credit cards, etc., being stolen. If I recall, they paid the attacker about $100,000 to keep it quiet. When it broke, all hell broke loose, and here we are. If you're using Uber, they are a horrible company. I highly recommend you don't use them. That's my opinion. Moving on, let's talk about chip maker AMD, because they say they're investigating a potential data breach after Ransom House, a relatively new cyber criminal operation. I mentioned them last week with ShopRite in Brazil. They claim to have basically extorted data from AMD, the U.S. chip maker. Now, an AMD spokesperson told TechCrunch that the company, and I quote, is aware of a bad actor claiming to be in possession of stolen data, and then they added, and I quote again, an investigation is currently underway. Now, a portion of that stolen data leaked to Random House was seen by TechCrunch, and it suggests that AMD employees were using passwords such as password, or 123456, and welcome one. AMD, come on, Bubala, what are you doing? Other data posted by the group appears to include network files, system information, all that kind of stuff. Now, it's unclear if a ransom has been made to AMD, but Ransom House advises its victims to contact its support team to receive quote-unquote further instructions on how to prevent full data disclosures. And if this is actually true and it's legitimate, and usually these companies are pretty good at actually stating it because their reputations are on the line, AMD, you gotta just have a basic password complexity policy, guys. Password 123456. That's what I got in my luggage. Here we go. Moving on. Let's talk about NFT giant OpenSea. They're warning users of email phishing after a data breach, and here we are. Now, a staff member at customer.io, that's an email vendor contracted by OpenSea, misused their employee access to download and share email addresses of OpenSea's users and newsletter subscribers with an unauthorized external party. And there you go. Now, the scale of this data breach appears to be utterly huge. Quote, if you have shared your email with OpenSea in the past, you should assume you were impacted. That's according to the company, adding that it's working with customer.io in this ongoing investigation and have reported this to law enforcement. So if you're into NFTs and you're into OpenSea and you've given them your email address or you're using them in any which way, shape, or form, be prepared to be phished. Moving on. Let's talk about Geographic Solutions, or GSI. This is used by multiple labor and workforce agencies in a number of states here in the USA. This is actually a big one. Now, Geographic Solutions, GSI, was forced to shut down state labor exchanges and unemployment claims systems in as much as 40 states and Washington, D.C., all of which rely on GSI services. Now, in a statement, basically, the GSI president, Paul Toomey, said that the Florida-based company, quote, identified anomalous activity on our network, end quote, and took its services offline. Toomey did not elaborate whether GSI was hit with ransomware or some other type of malware. He said the company is working with third-party specialists, blah, 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 to get it done. He hoped to have the services back online before the July 4th holiday, though basically as of midday Friday, meaning 2 days ago, there was basically nothing. US East Coast was still offline for GSI. Agencies in several states said they were notified of this problem by GSI on June 26. So you're looking at least 40 states here in the USA plus Washington, D.C. So odds are, 4/5 of the nation is basically has their labor agencies of their states knocked offline thanks to a GSI data breach. So if you have anything to do with that, such as unemployment claims or workforce benefits, anything like that, you definitely want to check in. You may be delayed in some way, shape, or form. Moving on, let's talk about Macmillan Publishers. They were forced to shut down their network and offices while recovering from a security incident that appears to be ransomware. Now, this attack reportedly occurred on Saturday, June 25th. They shut down all their IT systems to prevent further spread, and Publishers Weekly first reported on this incident, having seen emails from Macmillan that stated they suffered a, quote, security incident which involves the encryption of certain files on our network. There you go. Now, since that weekend, Macmillan editors have been transparent about the security incident, and they've reportedly been telling their agents and clients that they have lost access to emails, systems, and files. So hopefully Macmillan Publishers, one of the larger publishing houses here in the United States, will get back on their feet. Moving on, let's talk about ClareSol Inc. Health Information Management System. Stolen credentials enabled a hacking group known as Dark Fox to access files from the state-run medical facilities in the state of New Jersey, including the Trenton Psychiatric Hospital and Cora Psychiatric Hospital, Greystone Park Psychiatric Hospital, and 2 other unnamed facilities at this time. So, heads up, I don't know if this goes beyond New Jersey. This is what I could find thus far, but if you are using one of those state-run psychiatric facilities in the state of New Jersey, you might want to check in to make sure that your data, even if you're a past patient, is okay. Moving on, let's talk about Charlotte Radiology. They say they experienced a data breach involving patient information back in December. Now, local news, Channel 9 in Charlotte, received a letter from the healthcare provider Thursday that said that they had basically identified a security incident on December 24 of last year. Now, during this investigation, they learned that between December 17th through the 24th of last year, an unauthorized party gained access to their network and copied out some of the documents on their systems. We are talking about patient names, addresses, health insurance information, medical record numbers, and quote-unquote more. Charlotte Radiology said some patient social security numbers may also be involved in this incident. So if you are a patient of Charlotte Radiology, you definitely want to check in. Moving on, let's talk about Lakeview Loan Servicing. This is an update actually on this massive data breach. If you didn't know, they are the 4th largest mortgage provider here in the United States, which I did not know. They actually just recently, in a filing to the Attorney General of Maine, updated their affected total to add an additional 100,000 users. The new total for those affected by the Lakeview Loan Services attack is now 2,638,057 users. So if you use Lakeview Loan Servicing for all your mortgage or loan needs, you definitely want to check in. And finally, and we have two big finalies for you that I think are deeply impactful for society. The first one is actually California gun owners, and here's what's going on. A data breach exposed the personal information of every person with a California permit to carry a concealed weapon. This is according to authorities this past Tuesday, about 5 days ago or so. Now, the California Department of Justice suffered the data breach as part of the launch of its 2022 firearms dashboard portal, according to the Fresno County Sheriff Office, which said that it was informed of this leak on Tuesday by the California State Sheriff's Association. Quote, this public site allows access to certain information. However, personal information of concealed carry weapon permit holders is not supposed to be visible. You think? Quote, this includes but is not limited to a person's name, age, address, criminal identification, index number, and license type, standard judicial reserve, or custodial. Now, the breach affects all concealed permit holders in the entire state of California. California, if you didn't know, is the most populous state in the union with about 50 plus million citizens. So obviously this is huge. Now, Justice Department officials basically took down the dashboard website along with all related links and infrastructure after learning of this breach, but it's possible that some private information was posted elsewhere online. The sheriff's office also said, and I quote, it is unknown exactly how much time the information was accessible. Now, California Attorney General Bob Bonta's office told law enforcement it is quote-unquote working with urgency to determine the breach's scope and plans to contact permit holders to directly advise them. Mr. Bonta's office will institute a program to mitigate harm or damages that permit holders suffer as a result of the breach, according to the sheriff's office. Quote, we are investigating an exposure of individuals' personal information connected to the DOJ firearms dashboard, according to the Attorney General's office in a statement. Quote again, any authorized release of personal information is unacceptable. We are working swiftly to address the situation and will provide additional information as soon as possible. Now, one of the big issues that we have here, aside from the political side of this, because obviously there are two sides to the gun debate. Should we have guns? Should we not? Should we be able to conceal carry them? Should we not? If, let's say, some kind of activist group against concealed carry firearm owners is able to get that list, they might be able to at least market to them, at worst protest the individuals that have that. We are talking about anybody from, now criminals to state judges and lawmakers and everybody in between, all those kinds of things if that information gets out. But the bigger and deeper issue here, I think, is the fact that if that list does get out, that essentially becomes a roadmap for where to actually steal a weapon. Meaning, if you've got somebody with a concealed carry permit, odds are they're going to own a firearm or more. And if you're going to scope out their house because you need to get a gun when they go to work, now's the time to break in, steal the firearm, and here we are. We are talking about potentially millions of robbery victims here. Obviously, millions will not be robbed as a result of this. But again, if you need to get some kind of free gun because you don't want to go buy a gun or you legally cannot, now you potentially have a roadmap if those addresses and names get out to where you can steal one. I think that's a huge problem. We'll see what's going on with that. I will definitely keep you informed. And the other finally we have for you today is actually China, the government of China. They may have suffered the worst data breach ever. And I think it really shows us the inner workings of the Chinese justice system, if that's what you can call it. Now, here's what's going on. A database purportedly containing information about 1 billion Chinese residents, again, China, the most populous nation in the world, 1 billion Chinese residents has been listed on breach forums for 10 Bitcoin. 10 Bitcoin is approximately $200,000. I'm sorry, it's 189,000, 172,000, 183,000, 168. You know what I mean, 10 Bitcoin. Now, attracting 177 replies in that form and 300,000 views within hours, the listing was posted a short time ago by an anonymous user known as China Dan. Quote, in 2022, the Shanghai National Police database was leaked. This database contains many terabytes of data and information on billions of Chinese citizens, end quote. That is according to the post. Quote again, databases contain information on 1 billion Chinese national residents and several billion case records, including name, address, birthplace, national ID number, mobile number, all crime/case details, end quote. Now, the seller has provided what he claims is a sample data set of 750,000 files, which is a sample of this database. Again, over 1 billion Chinese citizens are caught up in this from the database. Now, the sample data has been uploaded to the forum server. There is much to debate about the legitimacy of this. However, many users have backed its validity as they've sifted through the data. And to understand, we are looking at a country of basically 1.5 to 2 billion. If they have police records on over 1 billion of their citizens, is 50% of their entire population criminals? And if so, that really opens up a lot of things. What is considered a crime in China? We know that basically China is the largest surveillance state in the world. This is giving us an insight into how the justice system leaks, specifically because, quote unquote, all crime/case details have been released on 1 billion Chinese citizens. Meaning, are you going to jail for jaywalking? Or, is it murder? What are they doing? How are they handling these things? How are they collecting evidence? The presumption in the Chinese judicial system is you're guilty until you're proven innocent, which obviously is the flip side of, most Western countries. Here, we are technically innocent until the state proves us guilty. It's reversed there. And so this is obviously a huge issue. This is going to be, I think, a really interesting insight, because as this is purchased or as this gets out, the researchers, especially on the justice side, the legal scholars, will start sifting through this data to start understanding just how good, effective, or messed up the Chinese justice system is. Meaning, as we are looking through this data, we're going to get an insight into how China applies its laws against its citizens. Interestingly enough, on top of that, there was a recent video that has now caused a federal investigation here in the United States, and this is on a side from China, where an officer basically said, if we're behind you on the highway, you better get out of the way, because we will find some way to basically pull you over and charge you if you aggravate us. Meaning, you can be just driving down the road, and if a cop is behind you on the highway, get out of his way. Otherwise, they will trump up some charge and charge you. So we are not basically, we don't have a perfect legal system here either, but we are definitely better than China. So I'm curious to see where this is going to go. We're going to see what happens with China, and I'm looking at the interesting scholarly papers we'll probably see in the next few months to a year. I'll obviously keep you informed on that on my daily videos podcast and also on my nationally syndicated radio show. So those were your breaches of the week. If you live in China, you absolutely apparently were affected. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everyone.